What was the "I'm fired aren't I" moment you experienced or witnessed? Was one of the victims in a 40% reduction of the workforce at a small company, 150 employees. At the time, we were all just getting settled in for the day when suddenly one lady came to her cubicle crying and started angrily throwing her crap in a box. It was obvious that she was no longer an employee there, but we just figured she had been fired for something. Tried to ignore it and stared at our computers while she finished packing and left. We were just starting to whisper amongst ourselves wondering what that was about, when the second person came back and did the same thing. It was then that we knew it was something bigger, that is, layoffs. I just kept doing my work, and it was about an hour later when the division had walked by and said, "Hey, I will run 500 miles. Can you come with me for a minute?" He had the same color folder in his hand that all the other victims had received. So that was the "I'm being let go, aren't I" moment. Went to a conference room where the HR gal was waiting, and he said, "We're restructuring. Your position has been eliminated. Not a reflection of your work, etc. etc." The HR gal walked me through the paperwork, told me to bring my laptop to IT, and that she was sorry. She really did feel bad. She was crying through the entire thing. I felt worse for her than I did for myself. On the way home I was kind of in autopilot shock mode when it suddenly hit me. I really did not like the work I was doing there. The people were great and the company actually had decent benefits, but the work was boring. And suddenly all the crap I had looming on the horizon was done. Gone. Not my problem. It was a really nice fall day, so I grabbed a MT, Dewand, and went for a walk in a nature preserve along the river. There was only one other person out there, and when we passed each other he said, "Nice day, isn't it?" I responded that it truly was a nice day indeed. Signed the paperwork for the small severance they were going to give me, went to the unemployment office and filed for unemployment benefits, and started reaching out to old contacts and friends looking for work. I was working at a new place 29 days later, and fortunately making about $7K more per year, and now 6 years later I'm making almost $20K more than I was when I got let go, so it all worked out in the end. One of the help desk team that worked for me was sending obscene texts to his wife Andrea, when he sent a very graphic, descriptive text explaining exactly what he was going to do to her when he got home. Unfortunately, he sent it to Andrew, one of our biggest clients. Andrew's name was next to Andrea's and this guy's contacts on his phone. He came rushing into my office the second he'd sent it and I had to ring Andrew to limit the damage. Andrew was fine about it. He said he thought my guy seemed really friendly. No one got sacked, but there was much pee taking. This happened in 2000-ish when the Nokia 3310 was around. No smartphones or anything like that. Also, piss taking or taking the pee means making fun of. It's a British, and apparently Australian, term. I had no idea it would confuse Americans. Andrew sounds like a fun guy. 2 stories. My first job was with Honey Baked Ham. For giggles, I thought it'd be funny to answer the phone and say, "Thank you for calling HBH where our meat is always tender and moist." There was a brief moment of silence and then I heard my manager on the other end say, "Excuse me, worked at a daycare in college. Had twin boys in my class that were very rambunctious. We had a football that I would throw to the kids a lot, especially the boys, because they seemed to really enjoy it. This was the chain of events on my last day. Twin 1 steps really close to me and holds his arm back like he's going to chunk the ball at me point blank. I said, "Don't throw that at me." So he of course does and runs off. I picked the ball up and threw it at him, and as the ball was in midair he turns around and the ball hits him right between the legs. He literally drops to his knees and screams. The teacher in the room next to me knew it was an accident and takes him inside to get him some water and butter him up. Twin 2 approaches. "You hit my brother." He goes to throw the ball at me as hard as he can and I put my foot up to kick it and I end up kicking him right in the nuts. He drops to the ground and screams. At this very moment the after school director walks out with the previous twin and now sees the second one on the ground holding his crotch. She says, "OMG, you hit another one," and all I could think to say was, "He hit me first." I knew right then I was done. I always felt a little guilty about the whole nutshot thing with the kids even though it was an accident, but for the platinum I can't get over anything. Picturing this play out is like watching a sitcom. I love it. I was just having friendly chit chat with a guy at my new job with a work messaging app. Mostly talked about food and how he was always hungry. Just water cooler stuff. And then apparently his jealous GF read the messages and decided we were flirting. It eventually led to the both of them writing an email and sending it to my boss, accusing me of being inappropriate and using work tools to be inappropriate. I have barely worked here a month, so I thought I was going to get fired. Thankfully my boss realized how crazy dude and his GF is and I'm still here. Kinda turned off on being friendly to anyone else though. This is from a slightly different perspective, but what the heck? In this case, it was the boss who thought he was going to fire me. I started working at a Target, and at the end of the first day, my manager is walking with me up to the front of the store just after I've clocked out. He's telling me he thinks I'm going to fit in and work out well. My mom is there to pick me up, and she's just leaning against the wall near cosmetics, where we'll have to walk right past her. As we approach her, I make a comment about these lazy customers who just come in and lounge about the place not buying anything, and I ball up my hoodie and hurl it at her. The manager has no idea we're related, and was just about to tell me to get out and never come back, when I introduced her to him. The manager took it well. He found it hilarious once he realized I messed with him quite a bit. Mom thought it was funny too. I probably got my sense of humor from her. Just happened last night, actually. Surprisingly, he hasn't been fired yet. The company Christmas party was yesterday afternoon. Basically the office closes and there's an open bar in one of the big presentation rooms. I'm surprised they still do open bar on company property. Knew a guy took full advantage of this and had too many in the couple hours that this party lasts. He goes back up to the bar and try his luck with the bartender. Orders a Knob Creek neat. Bartender hands it over. He makes a presumably terrible joke about the name of the liquor as she hands it over and she looks disgusted. The place was packed and way too loud so I couldn't hear exactly what he said. Walk away. I ask what he said. EHH. Was just a joke. You realize that's VP's daughter, right? Fuck. I walked into the prep area of the yogurt shop. I managed to find an employee humping the ice machine. He was just goofing off. But I had a sudden evil urge to play it crazy serious. I said, Michael, that ice machine is company property and deserves your respect. I'm afraid I'm going to have to take disciplinary action. He literally hung his head and asked, will my parents find out? It took me 10 minutes to convince the poor guy that I was just kidding and he wasn't in trouble. It was my first management job and I didn't fully understand that my authority came with a responsibility not to scare the employees. The first time a customer complained about me I was like 16 and for sure thought I was gonna lose my job. My boss walked over and said that lady is a freaking idiot. Don't worry. Sounds like a good boss. Company I worked for was losing money fast, and their employees' checks were bouncing. This was right around Halloween, so as a joke I went to work as a bounced check. The CEO got wind of an employee wearing a bounced check. He walked around the campus looking for me and found me in the warehouse chatting with some guys. 3 days later I was pulled into HR and my position was eliminated. 10/10 would do again. A+. Handful of friends and I worked at a golf course through high school. The golf course was bank owned due to financial hardship and was largely ignored by the institution. They had a guy who would occasionally stop in for 20-30 minutes, but beyond that, we pretty much ran the joint. The course had a good amount of traffic and, frankly, the course ran smoother than a lot of places full of power trippy starters and over congested T-sheets. The fact that we were a bunch of 16-18-year-old kids who kept the place in order was quite remarkable. Anyways, after a few years of this, the course was purchased by a semi-local golf course investor. He comes in his first day and goes on a rant about how he doesn't believe that anyone under the age of 30 should be handling the cash register. He talks about theft and how he doesn't trust kids, etc. Then, and surprisingly, he fired all of us kids and hired a bunch of old guys to take over our duties. The course ended up going under a few years later. The old guys struggled to keep up with things like booking tea times on the computer while answering phones and handling purchases. It was honestly pretty sweet to see it all end that way, even though I miss the course itself dearly. He doesn't believe that anyone under the age of 30 should be handling the cash register. so he's never walked into a fast food joint in his life. I work in a company that is owned by a really large company. We have quite a few sister companies. Big industry thing. Got an email from a guy in a sister company that was meant to be sent to just a few people at his workplace, but he blasted it out to everyone in the corporate directory. Literally everyone. Thousands of people. It was this sectarian joke that I can't even remember clearly, but something equating black kids to monkeys in the classroom. Nearly immediately after that he sent out another email apologizing for it. But I heard through the grapevine he was fired immediately along with one or two of the other people on the email. I appreciate the quotes around joke. Sounds like that fella got what he had coming to him. I have to. 1. Just started new job like a month beforehand. Has an awesome policy during summer where employees can leave at noon on Fridays if they've finished their work. Salaried, so we still get paid. I'm working late at 3 PM. Log off to use restroom. Try to log back in. I get this message that account is no longer valid. I freak out. It's common knowledge that anyone let go is let go first thing Monday mornings. Did they fill out the paperwork and the IT just fit the switch early? Also, I'm new. No idea who to call or talk to. The place is a ghost town. I eventually found someone from the AD group. They handle user accounts, and he to log in and pull some file down that had somehow gotten corrupted. I was back in and working in like 10 minutes. He'd never seen that error before and I haven't had any problems since. 2. Still working at same place. Have a newish boss that says in our morning group meeting someone says, I need to talk to you directly after this meeting privately. Come to my office. Oh crap, what did I do? Meeting ends. She goes to another meeting. I ping her awkwardly, hey, you wanted to see me? Oh, yay. We'll talk later. So she reschedules our talk 4 times that day, and at 4 PM, 6 hours of sweating bullets, I go in there. You're getting a raise. Here's the paperwork. My mind took like 5 minutes to process that it was good news. It's only good news for you if it keeps getting rescheduled. If you had been getting let go, they would have held firm to a set meeting time. I've been on the receiving end of that terrified look. I used to work support desk, and our VP of finance came in complaining his laptop was behaving weirdly. I start doing basic trig. It felt virus-y from the start, and go into the downloads folder to see if anything looked obviously suspicious. Sure enough, 14 GB of the most boringly titled, Vanilla Hot Teen Sucks Dong P. I like the VP. He's always done right by me when I've interacted with him, and genuinely a nice guy. I ask him to stop by my desk before he heads back to the hotel for the night. So, I'm not sure how to tell you this, but you should just leave things that are meant to stay on the internet. What are you talking about? The only people who've used this machine are me and my wife. The wife is 6 months pregnant. There's videos on the computer that you probably don't want to save to your machine. Dan's eyes go wide. The color drains from his face, and almost immediately he spouts, I told her to use the Chromebook for that. Apparently his pregnant wife was crazy frisky and would download crap on the company laptop. Having met his wife at a company dinner, I knew he wasn't making crap up. I laughed so goddamn hard. I fixed his machine, deleted the videos, and told no one. I'm not getting someone fired 3 weeks before Christmas. I worked as a facility engineer, maintenance manager, for a little over 2 years. When I first got promoted to the role, it was time to clean up after the previous guy. We had a few other managers shifted to other roles, buildings, or out of the company, so I had a lot questions without people to answer them. This place was a very high-end workout club with a salon, massage clinic, and restaurant. I was trying to clean out some neglected spaces in the massage areas, but I needed a shop vac. Lucky for me, I remembered one living in the back of the kitchen. I went to get it, but it was way too heavy, maybe 55 pounds. If only the wheels worked properly, and one wand missing, I could wheel this thing away to empty it, clean it, and use it. That would have saved me from the heck I ended up dealing with. I called my manager to identify what was in shop vac. It was orange, foamy, spotted with black and green dots, and had the worst smell I've ever known. I'll save you the suspense. It was all removed from the grease trap, but then left in the shop vac for over a year. It was very bad. For those who have worked in restaurants, imagine your grease trap smelling pretty okay compared to this. We struggled to get out of the kitchen and into the hallway shared with the yoga studio, which was very full, much like the shop vac. We pushed all the shoes and bags to make an aisle for me to push this putrid scum bucket through to the exit doors. There was an unfortunately tall lip in the floor for those exit doors, and me being the strapping young man I was, decided to pick up the shop vac and walk it outside. It was so close. You know, I grabbed the handles and lifted it up to about my chest. That's when the bucket fell from the lid. The lid that I was holding by the handles while I watched her get unleashed on the shoes and bags of the 50 people in the yoga studio, also all over myself. That was the fun part. The smell was intensified when released from the bucket and splattered all over everything. We were getting smell complaints working seconds from all over the 75,000 SQFT building, and I was in the middle of it all. We managed to make it into a very manageable situation with great teamwork. My manager later shared with me how intense my "I just lost my new job" face was. She likes to bring it up every so often, even now that we have both moved on from that place. If anyone deserved to get fired, it was whoever in the kitchen was using the shop vac to clean the grease trap and never disposing of the grease. Even if you did get that thing emptied out, that shop vac was probably ruined. When I cut into the wrong fluid line during a demolition, the line I cut into carried concentrated sulfuric acid to a cooling tower. I don't know the specifics, but the line would be active for say 5 minutes and then off for 20 minutes. I cut into it during an off period. Still, I had remnants drip onto my arm. Plus side was a cold November day and I was wrapped up in at least 3 layers of clothing. We called it in immediately and I got a change of clothes from my car. When acid comes into contact with clothing, there isn't a hiss, no smoke, just a wet spot like it was water. After a short time, a minute maybe, my outer layer, a jean jacket, was fraying like old jeans would do. I got all my clothing off that had come into contact with it and they were all fraying in the same manner. It had just reached my base layer of clothing as I was removing it. I knew immediately when I cut into that line that something was wrong and that I would likely be let go. An hour later I'm sitting in a trailer uncontrollably shaking, knowing that if I discarded that clothing 10 minutes later my arm would have been amputated in a best case scenario. We had been given protective gear for when we were supposed to cut into the acid line, but that was scheduled for a different day. Hence I just had normal denim on. I lost a scanner that cost around $1,000 at work. These scanners weighed a couple pounds and were bulky to carry around, so usually we would leave them in the cart that we were using to keep trash from stocking items. Our manager said this wasn't allowed, so I requested the clip to keep it on my belt for over 2 months because I knew a less than $10 clip was in the budget. My manager kept rejecting that request, so I continued to leave the scanner in my cart, which was less than 10 feet from me 95% of the time. My manager decided to take the scanner from me one day and not tell me. I panicked and thought I would have to pay for a new one and would be fired. It turns out that the manager went around that day and picked up all of the scanners she could find in the store that weren't attached to a clip. My grandma, who has worked at the store 20 years longer than the manager and is known to be the hardest worker there, yelled at the manager to either get me a clip or apologize to me. The manager apologized to me for freaking me out and I apologized for not keeping better track of the scanner. I also requested the clip again, but never got one before I stopped working there. Requires a clip, doesn't provide clip. That's a setup for failure. I used to work in a call center for a supplemental insurance firm. One day I was making enrollment calls to employees of one of our clients, making sure to leave voicemails if they did not pick up so they can call back. One of these calls kept cutting me off mid-voicemail and prompting to press 1 to leave a voicemail. I assumed their voicemail wasn't actually recording as to why it kept cutting me off. After several attempts on leaving a voicemail, I just exclaimed "son of a b" and hung up. An hour goes by and the president of my company calls me into his office with the call center manager. Turns out that person's voicemail was recording the entire time and had all of the audio. Even worse, it was the voicemail box of the CEO of our client company that I was calling. He literally played the audio in front of us. It was hard to explain my way out of that one. Holy crap, I just had to deal with this last week. I was a customer, not a worker, so I don't have anything to worry about but some weird voicemail that says leave a detailed message and 15 seconds and repeats the message. but if you press 1 to record it just continues reading the message. I tried 3 times and swore and hung up. Whoops. The video of Nintendo of Russia's CEO swearing while not realizing he was on live video. He walked up behind 2 people playing Mario Kart and somehow managed to miss the fact that they were playing Mario Kart competitively, that there was a camera pointed at them, and that multiple people pointed out that they were on live video. So this Mario Kart live stream has the CEO in the background cursing at his employees for being incompetent. In addition, he's apparently really bad at economics and lost the company a lot of money by refusing to stock a game and running out of units to sell, along with being accused of gender-biased harassment. I have no idea if he was actually fired, though. He hasn't been fired, but Nintendo is doing an investigation. I would not be surprised if they do fire him though. Co-worker while being caught not performing count procedures at a prison. All that was required of the officer was to walk past 84 cells and confirm breathing bodies. Rank comes down to see where count was, finds co-worker sleeping in supply closet, attempts to wake Jigger having already failed. Rank then finds the officer's already completed count sheet in his lap, meaning it was filled out in advance, which is grounds to be immediately fired. A co-worker just hangs his head and starts grabbing his belongings before being escorted out. When I was working day shift behind a bar in an Irish bar restaurant in France, a waitress brought a table of 2 their food. They were having different burgers, and the waitress never verified who was having what before putting the plates down. She went off to take another order, and the first table called her back to say that she put the wrong plates in front of them, and she needed to switch them. She stared at them for a moment. I could see the wheels in her head turning, and she just grabbed the burgers, not the plates, and switched them, looked the customer dead in the eye and said bon appetit and walked off. The place was, and remains, an absolute shitshow as far as treatment of staff goes. Everyone was constantly stressed and on their toes, and the running joke was to tell new staff that if they did something wrong they would be held accountable and punished, and if they didn't do anything wrong, well, they would be punished anyway. All that to say, when she came over to the bar again, all I could think to say to her was that was freaking funny, but you know you're fired, right? I was working as a manager for a parking garage at a hospital in my early 20s. Supervising the valet crew was part of my job. A lot of the valet guys were either 20-somethings without much direction or 60+ guys working a job in semi-retirement. One of the older fellas mistook the gas pedal for the brake while trying to drive a heavily modified transport bus, modified with lifts, gurney strapping points, etc. He totaled 6 cars before the bus finally came to a stop. I ran towards it thinking he was probably hurt. Before I got there he hopped out of the bus, shook his head and looked at me. So, I'm probably fired, right? I don't remember what the final total was on the insurance claim, but yes, he was fired. I really want to see a video of this. I don't think my imagination is doing it justice at all. I spoke out in a clearing meeting. It's a safe space about all the upper level hiring and blatant lack of promotions coming from a consultant who was handpicking all these new hires. I was fired a couple weeks later for unclear reasons. Eat a dong, go pro. At the time, my job was testing the front end of a large billing database. Manager told me to test on beta. At the time, I thought of beta as a staging environment with mock data, not an alternative front end to our production database, which it never should have been. When I test, I always use obviously fake numbers. So here I am, in a production DB, making bills. And anyway, the next week a real-life customer wanted to know why he had a bill for $420.69. Surprisingly, I didn't get fired at that point. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.